Welcome once again to another edition of Quoth the Raven, Lewis Bright Raven. I'm your host, Lewis Bright Raven, 29-year veteran writer, illustrator, and editor of comic, science fiction, fantasy, horror, and role-playing games. And tonight is our movie night, TV night, discussion night. And we're going to be discussing three different films. We're going to be discussing Gemini Man from 2019, featuring Will Smith, Prospect, featuring Pedro Pascal, The Mandalorian, from 2018, and Tenet, which is the Christopher Nolan film from 2020. But before we do that, we need to get into some questions that have been raised. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. First question is from multiple people, Multiplex Complex, asking, how come you aren't doing Inktober? As an artist, you should be drawing every day. Part of the reason I'm not doing Inktober is because some people wanted me to do the traditional Inktober prompts, which would have been 30 sketches, and then other people wanted me to do the cartoonist kayfabe prompts, which would have been another 31 sketches, and then other people wanted me to do another set of sketches. Prompts. So he's like, you guys wanted me to do 3 sketches a day on top of everything else I do. And it was just, I couldn't please everyone. So I just decided to please none of you and just do the Booktober. And so that was part of the reason. The other reason is because I'm so far behind on my reviews on the books. I thought this would be a good way to get caught up and get the books reviewed more than anything else. So between those two reasons, that's why I'm not doing Inktober. A couple of people asked why I didn't do my live draw today. I planned on doing a live draw, but I had to go run some errands after I'd done my book review for Booktober this morning. And I didn't get back until much later than I thought, and I was pretty much wiped out, and I basically napped the whole afternoon as a result of what was left of the afternoon, I should say. And so I didn't have light to work with. So I'll do that tomorrow around 12:30, 1 o'clock. Tomorrow will be our live draw day to finish up inking and that Cthulhu piece I did last week. Okay. Our next question. So you're reviewing a book a day for Booktober. Does that mean we won't get the weekly reviews for books that you got that week from the comic shop, again, from the Multiplex Complex? No, that just depends. I do plan on doing regular weekly book reviews of letting you know what I got. It depends on what I'm getting in store. Like this week, my retailer didn't get a third of their shipment from Diamond, so I didn't have anything to review. So that might be why some people asked why I didn't review hardly anything this week on a Thursday night show. That was because I didn't get any books thanks to Diamond's mishap. Hopefully I'll get what I was supposed to get last week or this past Wednesday. Next week, my retailer's kind of freaking out because they can't find it. Diamond's like, we shipped it. UPS is saying, no, they didn't. And so it's lost in transit somewhere or something. So hopefully they'll get everything no later than before next week's shipment all at once. But well, fingers crossed for that. Our next question, more like a statement. Smart Alec says, who wants to bet that the Raven doesn't review any newish Marvel books during the month? New meaning anything published by Marvel within the past 5 years. Well, you lost the bet. Later this month, Immortal Hulk. I've also got some Kelly Thompson Captain Marvel as well, so that's more modern. So yes, I figured some people were going to be smart Alex and were going to say I wasn't going to review any Marvel. I'm also going to review some classic Marvel, and I'm also going to review something a little older than 5 years, maybe 10 years, the Hickman Fantastic Four. So there'll be some Marvel representation throughout the month, scattered about, okay? Don't feel like I'm going to exclude you. but I'm also going to have a lot of other things as well. John Norris arrives and says, "Good evening." Good evening to you as well, John. Hope you're doing okay. Um, I presume you were working quite steadily on your theater rehearsals and stuff like that. I'm trying to think of the word. But that is our questions for the rest of the thing. So if you have questions, email me at quothravenlbr72@gmail.com, subject QTR Q&A, and I'll do my best to answer your questions live on air. And if I don't, I'll answer your questions privately via email if it's something I don't think is appropriate for televised consumption, shall we say. Okay, let's go ahead and get to our first film review of the night, and that is Gemini Man, written by David Benioff, Billy Ray, and Darren Lemke, story by Darren Lemke and David Benioff, directed by Ang Lee, produced by Jerry Bruckheimer, David Ellison, Dana Goldberg, and Don Granger, starring Will Smith, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, Clive Owen, Benedict Wong, Ralph Brown, and Linda Edmond. Or Iman, I should say. I keep wanting to say Edmund, it's Iman. The production companies are Skydance Media, Jerry Bruckheimer Films, Fosun Pictures, and Alibaba Pictures. Distributed by Paramount Pictures. That is always so funny how all these production companies are distributed by somebody else completely. But the release date in theaters was October 11th, 2019 in the U.S., and it is a runtime of 1 hour and 57 minutes. And what it's about, Harry Brogan, portrayed by Will Smith, is a 51-year-old former Marine Scout sniper who works as an exceptional assassin for the Defense Intelligence Agency, DIA, who was sent on a mission to assassinate an anonymous bioterrorist aboard a train in Belgium. During the mission, Henry's spotter warns him of a young girl approaching the target, causing Henry to delay his shot until the very last second, and he ends up shooting the man in the neck despite aiming higher for his head. Now, keep in mind, he made this shot from something like insane distance, like 2,000 meters away, and a bullet train speeding by, all this nonsense. So there's okay, you hit him in the neck, big deal, but he makes a big deal about that. He's disillusioned, and he's questioning his own skills due to his age, and thus he retires from service. While adjusting to retirement in Buttermilk Sound, Georgia, Henry meets boat rental manager Danny, played by Mary Elizabeth Winstead, and connects with an old friend, Jack, who reveals that an informant named Yuri has told him that the man Henry killed was actually innocent and not a bioterrorist. Demanding proof, Henry has Jack arrange a meeting with Yuri. In retaliation for Henry knowing their deceptions, the DIA director Lassiter, played by Linda Iman, plans to kill him. Claveris, played by Clive Owen, head of an elite private military unit codenamed Gemini, he requests permissions to eliminate Henry Brogan, but he is denied by Director Lassiter. Well, Brogan realizes that Danny is a fellow agent sent to monitor him, so he befriends her. After his home is broken into by government agents, Henry calls his spotter, who is killed along with Jack and his mistress by the DIA. Henry figures that Danny doesn't know this is going on. She's also a possible target as well. So he warns her about the attack, and they manage to kill the assassins sent after them as they learn that the agency wants them both dead. This, of course, confirms to Henry that, yes, the person he just killed on the train was an innocent, and he's been set up. Henry and Danny escape to Colombia with Baron, a former colleague of Henry. Baron's the guy who's played by Benedict Wong. And they hide at his home and plan to meet with Yuri for further options. Meanwhile, Claveris dispatches his top assassin to kill Henry, Well, the assassin attacks them at Baron's home in Colombia, and but Henry senses him before he gets there for some reason, and he sneaks out of the house so that they don't actually attack. He doesn't attack Henry at the house and leave the other two and others as targets. He fights this assassin off, but he realizes that this assassin bears an uncanny resemblance to himself as a young man, and he possesses a very similar skill set to his own. When the injured assassin flees, he arrives at a safe house where he is revealed to be Clay's adopted son, Junior. Although Junior is curious about his own similarities to Henry as well, he is ordered by Clay to finish the job and kill him. Henry is also troubled by his similarities to his assassin, whom Danny suspects might be his child despite Henry's denials. Desperate for answers, Henry has Baron obtain a Gulfstream jet and transport them to Hungary immediately to talk with Yuri. Well, they get to Hungary, and Danny has some connections apparently in Hungary, and she gets some DNA samples. Pardon me. She gets some DNA samples that are recovered from Junior tested and discovers that both Junior and Henry's DNA are identical. Not son and father, but that Junior is actually a clone of Henry. Henry then meets Jack's contact, Yuri, and learns of the cloning project and that the man he killed was actually one of the cloning project scientists, and that he had discovered a method to produce clones devoid of pain or emotion in mass, and the scientist tried to leave the project and was ordered killed upon being discovered that he was trying to leave the project. Being informed of this, Henry decides he wants to try and get Junior to get away from Clay and his intentions to use him as an assassin. So he calls Lassiter from DIA and says, "Okay, let's have a meet. I'll agree to whatever you want as long as you leave Danny out of it and have her join, safely back to the U.S." So Lassiter sends Junior to meet up with them. And instead, of course, after Danny meets with Junior, he sets up a trap for Henry instead, but she warns him via a covert listening device hidden in her mouth. Ambushing the younger assassin, Henry explains to Junior that he's a clone and convinces him by naming all these certain historical facts that and physical traits and emotional traits that no one else could possibly know unless they were the same person. Now, I don't quite buy into this scene because just because he's a clone doesn't mean he has the exact same experiences as the guy he's a clone of when he's younger and hasn't had the same exact experiences. But, whatever. We simplify it for the sake of the plot. Junior escapes capture, however, and he returns to Gemini and confronts Clay Varys, who claims that he must defeat Henry in order to surpass him, but basically says, yeah, you're a clone and everything, but you're better than him. Don't know why he's better, but whatever. This ticks off Junior to no end. And we find out that Henry and Danny are going to basically try to get to the Gemini headquarters and take out Clay. On the meanwhile, Henry sneaks out of the Gemini headquarters and he allies with Henry to bring down Clay, while Henry urges him to quit being an assassin in order to become someone better entirely. Baron gets killed in an ambush ordered by Clay. They use a rocket launcher and blow up the vehicle they're in, and Baron doesn't make it out, but the other three do. And so Henry and Danny are basically fighting Gemini operatives, and Junior goes after Clay, who knocks Clay unconscious after a brief hand-to-hand combat fight. But the first wave of Gemini operatives are pretty much taken down. Then the second wave of Gemini operatives come in, and Henry and Danny get pinned down by a truck with a Gatling gun that there's no way they survive. But okay, they manage to get around it, but they're pinned down. Junior takes some people out to help them out, and as they're thinking it's over, another operative shows up with special body armor. Her feels no pain whatsoever. They shoot him. They do all kinds of things. He doesn't seem to have any emotions. After shooting him repeatedly and hitting him with several secondary explosions, they do manage to mortally wound him. They remove the helmet, and it's discovered that he's yet another clone, even younger than Junior. And all the emotion and ability to feel pain has been removed. He's just basically a robotic automaton. And they kill him out of, I guess you could say, sympathy, because he's going to die anyway. He's mortally wounded, but just to end it for him. Clay shows up, having woken up from being knocked out. He tries to justify his actions to Junior. Junior's ready to kill him over it, but he's basically saying that creating these clones with the same skill sets and everything would spare both the lives of all the future soldiers that would have to go into combat otherwise. And they'd all be highly combat effective because they don't have any conscience. They're just killing machines. Disgusted and infuriated, Junior plans to shoot Clay. Instead, Henry persuades Junior to give him the gun, and it's not worth it. You're going to lose your soul if you and have this this death haunting you for the rest of your life if you do this. So he hands him the gun, and Henry shoots him instead and kills Clay that way instead. Assured that there are no more clones that were produced and that they're finally free from harm's way, and that Lassiter will be dealt with internally and face punishment for being involved in the Gemini project, Henry later meets up with Junior, who has since enrolled in college under the assumed identity of Jackson Brogan after Henry's mother's surname. Together, the trio begin to plan Jackson's future. And that's how they end it. Now, John says he is working on rehearsals, but he got to see Venom at the Reincarnation Day, and he was satisfied very much on every level, and his symbiote-loving heart is full. Okay, well, I hate to see how many people you feasted on in the theater, then, if your symbiotic heart is full. But anyway, what I think about the film. Story-wise, the film was kind of dumb in certain parts. There was no reason for the DIA to do the type of attack they did on Henry. They could have killed him in so many different ways without fuss or muss. They could have blown up his house while he slept with a small missile launcher. They could have set him up on any number of IED traps on his property. They could have gotten to his vehicle while he was out off his property and put an explosive in there that blows up his vehicle as he's driving and make it look like there was something wrong with the vehicle. Any number of things could have been easily achieved and readily covered up by the organization. So that whole premise of the movie was rather screwed up from that kind of standpoint, in my perspective. It has to be done the way it's done to get the story you want, but it just doesn't seem like something that logical government operatives that are trying to get rid of one of their own would do. The video duplication of Smith for the junior role, it was okay. It looks, they look like enough, but I don't know. It was kind of iffy. The younger one that was even younger at the end looked really kind of too young. He looked like an early teenager comparatively, because the young junior looks like he's maybe 22 or 23. So if it's an even younger version, then it's got to be younger yet. So they made him like 15 or 16 at the most. And it really didn't look like him, because They should have probably gone back to the French Prince episodes and looked at how he looked back then to get it to look more closer, because they were basically trying to make it look like 51-year-old Will Smith at 16 with the hairstyle, and it didn't quite look right. It works okay for the older adult Danny Jr., but not or adult Jr., not adult Danny. Danny's the female, but the kid clone just didn't quite work. But as far as the film is concerned and acting, I think Smith is just going through the motions in this. The climactic battle between Henry, Danny, and Jr. versus the Gemini troops, as I said, was way too unrealistic. No way they're surviving it. They went overboard with some of that stuff there. I did think that the first battle between Henry and Jr. fighting each other was a little bit over the top as well, but that is to be expected by an Ang Lee directed film. So, it is what it is. It is a decent enough popcorn flick, I suppose, but as Smith is aging as a performer, like his character, I think it's getting to be that time where he stops trying to play the action hero character. He is actually 51 in real time at the time of the filming. He's now 53 as an actor. And yes, it works within the context of this particular story, but he's getting a little bit long in the tooth for action films now, I think. And it shows. And yes, I know that sounds a little bit ageist of me to some of you out there in the audience who might watch this. And yes, I know. Look at all these 80s and 90s action star has-beens who have made incredibly stupid-ass movies. Like all-star casts, The Expendables, or over-the-hill actors like Tom Cruise at 59 in the Mission Impossible films and the new Top Gun Maverick film. Keanu Reeves at age 55 to 57 in all those John Wick films, and he's going to be like 58 in The Matrix Renewed or whatever the newest one is. Vin Diesel's 54 at Bloodshot and Fast and the Furious. And I'm sorry, by the time you're in this age group of the 50s to the 60s, you don't have these insane reflexes and agility and other things that they're demonstrating. And they have body doubles and stunt doubles and everything. It just doesn't, it's not believable anymore. So I say to Hollywood, go hire some new studs. I'm not saying these guys are deadwood and they should be on a chopping block, but a lot of these guys can actually act if you give them some roles to act, and or make them mentor or supporting role type characters and not the lead action character. But, just my opinion on that. The film was okay, though. It is rated R, and I give it 3 out of 5 stars. Sorry, I had to move my camera for a second there. Our next one is Prospect from 2018. It's written and directed by Zeke Earl and Chris Caldwell. Produced by Andrew Miano, Chris Waits, Scott Glassgold, Dan Balgian, Garrett Dion, and Matthias Mellinghaus. It stars Sophie Thatcher, Pedro Pascal, better known as the Mandalorian, and Jay Duplass. The production companies are Depth of Field, Ground Control, Braun Studios, and Shep Films. It was distributed by Gunpowder and Sky in 2018 in the U.S. and had a national release date of November 2nd, 2018. It has a running time of 1 hour and 40 minutes. And what this is about, it's a science fiction film where Damon and C, played by Jay Duplass and Sophie Thatcher, are father and daughter freelance prospectors in outer space who take on what is supposed to be a routine job as they descend in their landing pod from a transport ship to the surface of a forest moon covered in poisonous spores to mine for gems. They suffer a tougher technical malfunction during the descent, which cripples their lander, and the pair touch down some distance away from their planned prospecting site. The duo only have a certain amount of time to get their job done and get ready to be picked up by the transport, or they'll be left on the surface where they will die because they only have so much supplies to last them, particularly air filters and stuff like that, so they don't die from the spores. They begin traveling to the site on foot and come across an abandoned dig site. They extract a fleshy pod from the earth and carefully dissect it to reveal a very valuable gem. It's like an egg-sized gem, a little bit bigger than that, and it's supposed to be worth like $10,000 or something. And it's like, this is a small one. Wait till we get to where we're supposed to be. There's going to be these huge things. Anyway, C implores her father to take this gem and just return it to the lander. I'm not exactly sure why she wants to go back to the old lander. It's broken. They won't be able to get back to the transport with it. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but that's what she wants. But Damon insists, no, they have to continue to get to the planned landing site because, well, that makes sense. If it's the only place there's a way to get home on a transport is at the other landing site. You go there, not back to where you were. But I guess we can take C's concerns as a naive teenager, not thinking clearly in the situation at hand. So the pair set out again, and Damon is approached by two rival prospectors, Ezra and his silent companion, who doesn't appear to have a name. Ezra and his partner plan to rob Damon and hold him at gunpoint, but Damon suggests instead a counteroffer that they join forces so that they can get more of the gems when they get to the new site. He explains that he's been contacted to assist a group of mercenaries who stumbled upon the legendary Queen's Lair, which is a dig site of extraordinary value. Damon suggests that rather than digging for the mercenaries, Ezra, his companion, and Damon can begrudgingly work together and take out the mercenaries, take the entire dig for themselves, and leave the planet. Ezra apparently is like, okay, that sounds like a plan. And he agrees to these terms, but C, who has been hiding throughout this encounter, ambushes the two hostile prospectors with her rifle and allows Damon to wrest a weapon away from Ezra before taking the latter and his partner hostage. Damon attempts to rob Ezra, but the partner attacks him, and the pair, Damon and the partner, shoot each other, and the partner is dead and Damon is mortally wounded as a result of this double shooting. This is a picture of Sophie Thatcher as or C, rather. Ezra, who is the one who's played by Pedro Pascal, then shoots and kills Damon, which really isn't killing so much as putting him out of suffrage because he's already dead. He's mortally wounded. He's already been affected by the spores. There's no way of saving him. So, he's just basically ending him to put him out of his misery. C freaks out. She flees back to her lander. Of course she does. Where she tries to restart it. And, of course, it won't restart. And so she's stuck inside with nowhere to go and nobody to contact. And even if she could contact the transport, it was made clear in storyline before they left the transport that nobody was coming for them if they missed their window to meet up with them. So, again, why she went back to the lantern. Yeah. Anyway, Ezra tracks her down and attempts to board the lander, and she ends up shooting him with her rifle. Ezra, now wounded in the shoulder, suggests that they follow Damon's original plan and aid the mercenaries in exchange for passage on the mercenary ship because neither one of them has a ship, and their filters will only last so long, and if they don't get there, they'll both die anyway. So, a partnership of convenience and necessity, as it were. So C reluctantly agrees, and the pair sets out for the Queen's Lair. Ezra's wound has become infected by the poisonous spores in the atmosphere, so the pair happens to approach a group of human villagers with the intent to trade for medical treatment. This throws me off a little bit, because if the atmosphere is poisonous with spores, how can you have humans living in a settlement? But that's what they're doing. The villagers, instead of offering him medical supplies, they offer a trade of a case of gems in exchange for C. As Ezra asks about the details of the offer, basically, which is they don't have any women left in their camp. The one woman they had died, so they're going to basically keep her and use her as a slave of all natures. C flees for her life and escapes pursuit from the villagers. Alone and fearful for her life, she wanders through the forest, her air filter slowly wearing out, when she somehow comes across a camp tent. Um, she doesn't have her rifle because she left it behind in the village. And she's kind of like, I don't know what to do, but maybe I'll find some help here. So she enters the tent, and of course, who's there but Ezra, who also left the villagers without medical care after she fled, and he's even more worse off than he was from the infection in his arm. So there's nothing left to do. He's going to die unless he removes the arm. So C helps him amputate his arm. That was a kind of an interesting scene. Should have been a lot more blood than there was. Should have been a little more gruesome than it was. But, okay, they did all right with it. Having that done, they set out once more, and soon they arrive at the mercenary camp that surrounds the Queen's lair. They negotiate passage on the mercenary ship should they dig up enough gems. And so they attempt to fulfill their end of the contract and extract gems from the Queen's lair. But the problem is, when you extract them, these gems, you have to dig them out of these corpuscle type things out of the ground, it looks like a stomach bladder, basically. And you have to cut that open, get it washed off for the interior part. Then you got to cut it just so the right amount of time and put the right salve on it and everything to get the gem to go, or it goes bad because it's like a living thing. So they fail several extraction attempts because Ezra only has one arm to do it with, and he can't do it one-armed. And C isn't experienced enough to know how to do it properly. So they fail like 2 or 3 times in a row. And the mercenary guard turns to report their failures instead of, letting them try to do some more, because there's plenty of them to be pulled out. But because the mercenary guard tries to report their failure, Ezra attacks and kills them. This commotion attracts the rest of the mercenaries, and a fight ensues. So basically, they're getting all these rifle shots shot at them. Several mercenaries get killed, and Ezra is gravely wounded. C escapes and starts to head for the Merc's landing pod, but she stops when she sees an alien being who had been captured in a box, inexplicably has escaped, and is now killing what's left of the Mercs right there around the launch pod. So instead of trying to get to the pod, she grabs some medical supplies nearby, runs back to tend to Ezra's wound, which is a fatal stab wound through the chest, as far as I'm concerned. But, do the same sort of thing, quick heal type thing, stick some sealant in the wound, and she drags him back to the lander, where the alien is waiting for them, but for some inexplicable reason lets them pass and lets them get on board the lander, and the pair escape into orbit on the mercenary ship to the pickup transport, and that's how it ends. Now, I'd wanted to see this in the theater when it originally came out, but nobody in my social circles was really interested in the film, so I skipped it in the theater, and then I forgot about it until it came across my radar recently. The story, as you can tell from my description, has some flaws in it, but it's okay. And it's filmed quite well for the budget they had. This entire film was filmed for under $4 million, and that means they had less money than some TV commercials get to make this film. Pedro Pascal does a nice job as Ezra, but Sophie Thatcher is the one who really has to carry the film as C. This was her debut film role, and you can tell she's a bit green as a performer, but it might be partly her inexperience, but it also could be part of what the directors wanted, as the role of C is a young, inexperienced teenager who is in way over her head. So it's probably a combination of the two. She's playing the role as being a little bit, overwhelmed, but it also seemed like the actress was in truth as well. I did think she did a nice job, or an okay job at least, but I did feel like there were elements that the directors didn't quite manage to pull out of her as a performer. I did not like the ending because there was no real explanation as to why the alien got free or why he allowed the board the mercenaries lander. Perhaps because he showed compassion for Ezra at the end, but that's just interpretive supposition on my part. There's no reason to believe or assume that this alien would even relate to such things. I also felt there was really no reason to have Ezra live at the end of the film. I think what I would have done if I made the film was have Ezra make the final sacrifice to stop the alien from grabbing C, and she escapes on the lander by herself alone. I think that would have made a better ending because it would have been a life for a life and repayment for killing her father. It would have been bittersweet in a way because the characters built a rapport of sorts throughout their adventure. And I think maybe Ezra saw her as a daughter of sorts in his own right. And C was beginning to trust and respect him by the end of the film. But for me, the way they ended it was muted a little bit and somewhat unbelievable. Like I said, Ezra's room was pretty much a mortal one from the fight, the gunfight. And it's implied that they're both going to be okay once they make it to the transport ship. It is rated R. I give it 3.5 stars, mostly because of the ending. If the ending had been better, I probably would have given it a 4-star. Now, there's a lot of other things going on, but we got one more film, and that is Tenet from 2020. Written and directed by Christopher Nolan, produced by Emma Thomas and Christopher Nolan, starring David Washington, Robert Pattinson, Elizabeth Debicki, I guess. I thought it was Debicki, but it's Debicki. Dimple Kapadia, Michael Caine, and Kenneth Branagh. The production companies are Warner Brothers Pictures and Syncopy, distributed by Warner Brothers Pictures. It had a release date of September 3rd, 2020, and had a running time of 2 hours and 30 minutes, which was rather long, in my opinion, but it is what it is. Now, what is it about? A CIA agent, the protagonist, that's what he refers to himself a lot of the time. He does have another name, but whether that's his real name or not, who knows. He participates in an extraction operation at the Kyiv Opera House in Russia. I think it's in Russia. After seizing an artifact, the protagonist is captured by mercenaries. He's tortured before consuming a suicide pill. We think that's the end of that story, and we're going to move on to something else. But no, he wakes up to learn that the suicide pill was actually a test of loyalty to his group, and that the artifact was lost. As a result, the protagonist is now recruited into a new organization called TENET. He's sent to a certain place to be indoctrinated into the organization, where a scientist briefs him on bullets with inverted entropy, which means they can move backward through time. So basically what happens is, instead of taking a gun and shooting it with a pull trigger, you pull your gun forward, and the bullet comes out of the area where it was landed and lands back in your gun. You pull it out, and the gun bullet is like it was freshly new. Weird, right? Yeah, that's what they're coming up with. The protagonist then meets his handler, who's named Neil, through a CIA contact, and they trace the inverted bullets to an arms dealer named Priya Singh in Mumbai. They learn that Priya is a member of TENET, and that her cartridges were purchased and inverted by Russian oligarch Andrei Sater. The protagonist approaches Sater's estranged wife, Kat, an art appraiser who was falsely authenticated a forged Goya drawing, and that Sater purchased this drawing from the forger, Repo, and is using this authentication from Kat as blackmail to control her in their relationship. They're married and they have a son together. The protagonist and Neil plot to steal the drawing from Rotas Freeport storage facility at the Oslo airport. There they fend off two masked men who emerge from a device, which this device turns out to be a turnstile, which is a silly machine that can invert the entropy of objects and people, and that these masked men were the same person traveling in opposite directions through time. So basically, if you were to have these two separate dimensions side by side, there's two versions of you, and one's backwards and forwards in time. Doesn't make much sense to me, but okay. Anyway, the whole operation goes south, and he has to do something else. So he goes with Kat, and who introduces the protagonist to Sator. And of course, she learns that the drawing is intact, that he didn't achieve what he told her he did. Because as far as she knew, he had destroyed the drawing and she was free of any obligations to Sator. Well, there's a reason why Sator actually knew this was coming. Because he is one of these people who travels through time and already knew this happened, so we already removed the drawing from the warehouse so it couldn't be destroyed. He left a different fake. Go figure. Sator plans to kill the protagonist, but the protagonist saves Sator's life after Kat attempts to drown him in a parasailing excursion. Sator and the protagonist then strike up a tenuous partnership to retrieve a case that supposedly contains plutonium-241. In Tallinn, which is another foreign city, the protagonist and Neil then meet up and ambush a convoy and steal this case, which actually doesn't contain plutonium-241. It contains the artifact that was lost in Kiev. They are then ambushed by an inverted Sator who is holding Kat hostage. The protagonist leaves. He gives the empty case to Sator, who retreats after receiving it. The protagonist then rescues Kat, but is soon captured himself and taken to a warehouse with a turnstile. At the warehouse, the inverted Sator comes through the turnstile with Kat again, and he shoots an inverted round, which means the round somehow goes through a bullet hole, through glass, through her shoulder, and then back into the gun. And she's wounded from that. TENET operatives, led by another guy named Ives, arrive and rescue the protagonist while Sator escapes through the turnstile on his side of the thing. Doesn't make a lot of sense because the turnstile should be going back and forth between the two. So, again, not a lot of logic in this film. The Cat takes Kat through the turnstile to aid in healing her inverted wound. And the now inverted protagonist travels back in time to the ambush site, where he tries to get the artifact, but he learns that Sator already has got a hold of it, and the protagonist's car is overturned and set on fire by Sator, but Neil saves it. What's next, right? Well, the protagonist, Neil and Kat, now travel back in time to Freeport in Oslo. The protagonist fights his past self, which he can't do. According to earlier in the story, you're not supposed to touch your past and future self. If they merge, it's like if you see each other and know each other, you'll either go insane, or if you touch each other, it's like what happened in Time Cop at the end of the Van Damme movie in Time Cop, where the senator from past and present met and touched, and they merged into one and then exploded. Same kind of idea. So the fact that he's fighting himself didn't work for me. He enters the turnstile, though, and he reverts back to his other side, followed by Neil and Kat. Later, Priya explains that Sator is collecting the artifacts, and there's more than one of them, to assemble an algorithm which can catastrophically invert the entropy of the Earth and make the Earth basically freeze in time or explode or something. And Kat then decides to reveal that Sator is dying from cancer and doesn't give a damn if the world explodes or not. If he's going to die, I'll take the world with him. So they think that he's using Sator is using a dead man switch to send the location of the algorithm to the future when he dies, And so that um, it'll, when he dies, it'll start the algorithm and uh, destroy the entropy of the Earth. They, for some reason, though, they think he's going to travel back in time to a certain vacation that Kat had with him in Vietnam. Why Vietnam? Who knows? But so, okay, they go back. The protagonist, Neil, Kat, and TENET troops travel back to that day of the vacation, where Kat poses as her past self to keep Sator alive long enough for TENET to secure the algorithm. They track the artifacts and algorithm of Sator's hometown, Stalisk 12, where it is heavily guarded. They launch what is called a temporal pincer movement, which has both non-inverted and inverted tactical troops making a simultaneous assault on the location. Sator reveals people in the future want him to find and gather these algorithm pieces in hopes of reversing the effects of climate change, but the reality is he's just going to destroy the world. An inverted soldier wearing a red trinket. It's not really a red trinket. It's a red pull switch for a bomb, basically. He sacrifices himself to save the protagonist, and Ives as they attempt to secure their part of the algorithm and get the artifact devices. Meanwhile, back in Vietnam, Kat kills Sator, hoping that the team is able to secure the algorithm before she commits the act. Okay. Then they have a cute little moment after she's killed Sator and thrown him overboard, where the protagonist and Kat are coming from the past to meet up with Sator on the boat that they're on, and she looks back, and earlier in the scene, Kat had seen this woman dive off the side of the boat into the water. Didn't realize it was herself doing it. It's basically her who dives off the boat. And it was like, okay, so she saw herself and didn't go insane. Whatever. The protagonist, Neil, and Ives break up the algorithm and part ways. But as Neil is leaving, the protagonist notices that he's wearing the red pull cord. Neil reveals that he was recruited by the protagonist himself in Neil's past, which is actually the protagonist's future through the whole entropy timeline nonsense. And now he has to go back through the turnstile to sacrifice himself like he did earlier in the show, or else everything gets all screwed up. And so he has to go do this and save his friend in the inversion. But that they'll meet up again in the future, and they'll be the best of friends. And so the protagonist lets him leave. A few months later, Priya attempts to have Kat and her son assassinated on the grounds that she knows too much about TENET and the algorithm. But Priya is then in turn killed by the protagonist, who has concluded that he is the whole mastermind behind TENET. What I think of this film, I think that Christopher Nolan tries way too hard to be clever and instead makes a huge number of plot mistakes and scene points that create inconsistencies in this film. There are scenes where it is said you can't see your inverted self or touch your inverted self, or else it will shatter the timeline. As I said, that happens at least 3 different times in the film. Once where Kat sees herself and I guess doesn't recognize herself from a distance. Once where the protagonist fights himself physically and should know that it's himself. One of the two of them should know that he's looking at himself, so it doesn't work. It's just a screw up. Sator dying from cancer, so he's going to destroy the world with himself, came out of nowhere. Doesn't really fit the rest of the plot, in my opinion. the character is determined to keep Kat and her son with him because I guess it's his son, and if he's dying, why would any of that even matter to him? Because the character is so dismissive of Kat, and if he's gonna die, okay, well, if I'm dying anyway, I gotta have my son with me for what? Why do I need why does she need her grade school? Why does he need his grade school son to watch him die? You know, it's just kind of dumb. The plan to commit suicide and implode the Earth into non-existence, which, by the way, Sator never really claimed himself. That was really all just stuff that was thrown in by Kat at the top of the third act, and then the movie goes with that. It just didn't work. Like I said, why does it even matter who the kid is with when he commits suicide and the whole planet gets destroyed anyway? I guess it's supposed to be some sort of obsessive-compulsive power trip by Sator for controlling the universe since he can't control or stop the cancer. But again, it just doesn't add up with how the character is played elsewhere in the movie. As no one does say in extra features, he's basically trying to repeat what he did in Inception, but not do exactly the same thing, because Inception, it was a heist movie instead of a spy thriller, and in Inception, you went and entered people's dreams. It had nothing to do with time travel and entropy of the universe and other nonsense. The actors in the film do a nice job. They do a good job with what they're given to do, and the film is overall okay if you don't think too hard about it. But if you've seen the movie Inception, just stick with that one and forget about this one. For some reason, this is rated PG-13. It should be an R. There's far more violence in this than there was in Prospect, which is a rated R. There's nudity in this, and there's no nudity in Prospect, which was a rated R. You know, they should have had Prospect be the PG-13 film and this be the R film. I don't know why it's got to be a PG-13, other than Nolan probably paid off the film raters union. I give it 3 stars. I'm kind of being generous. It's more like a 2 to 2.5, but I'm giving it 3 because I'm being generous. And so that's kind of our films for tonight. Tomorrow I will review The Humans at 11 a.m. That's a science fiction novel by Matt Haig as part of Booktober. And then in the afternoon, we will get to inking, whoops, sorry about that, this Cthulhu drawing. So that will be tomorrow. I want to thank you all for watching, as always. I know at least someone's watching, so I presume it's John. You have anything to add, John, before we close for the evening? If he does, I'll wait. But in the meantime, if you like this video or you think others might, please hit the like, share, and subscribe buttons to get content from this channel. As always, I thank you for your support. If you want to reach out to me with comments about this, you can either talk down below in the comment section, or you can reach out to me at Facebook at Lewis.BrightRaven, on Twitter at LewisBrightRaven2. You can see my own artwork at deviantart.com/BrightRaven. You're watching Quoth the Raven, Lewis Brightраven on YouTube exclusively. If you have questions that you want to have shown on the show, or you want to commission me or something, reach out to me at quoththeRavenLBR72@gmail.com, and I'll do my best to include your questions here on the program. But if for some reason I can't do that, or I think it's more of a private question, I'll answer your email. And if I don't answer within a relatively day or so, please try again at LewisBrightRaven@yahoo.com, because sometimes I don't get the mail at Gmail. Usually I do, but every once in a while they muck it up. And John says he hadn't seen any of those films. He says Tenet seems really complicated. It really isn't that complicated as so much as it is silly. I mean, at least the guy admits the science is, the science really doesn't work. I mean, they try to be accurate, and do, but there's nothing in science that suggests that that's how reversing entropy would actually work. Yeah, it's just there were things that they didn't need to add. Like I said, they didn't need to have him be dying of cancer and other things like that. But yeah, like I said, he's trying to be too clever more than anything else with the film. And so we'll call it a night, folks, and we'll see you guys tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. See you next time. Thanks for watching.